Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and we are talking to somebody today who has a story that I have heard in various ways about 1,000 times, which is to say, came across somebody out in the wide world of the internet who was working for their employer. Their employer asked more of them than they were contractually obligated to give. They gave it, and they were repaid in exactly the way you would expect the modern American worker to be repaid. The thing that particularly galls me about it is this did not happen in the US of A. This happened with our good friends to the north, or as I'm fond of saying, to the east and north and south of your old pal's hometown. So I asked if she wanted to come on and talk about it a little bit today. She very graciously agreed. Her name is Raina Varty, and I'll let her tell the story. Before we get into it, though, I'm going to be a little bit gauche, and I'll do this on her behalf. There's a GoFundMe linked in the description. If you want to help out a young new mother, use the GoFundMe, toss a couple bucks her way. If we band together, we will find that we have more ability collectively to resist what I like to call, it's an industry term, the bastards. Here is Raina Varty. Hey there, Raina.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
It's wonderful to meet you. Can you tell us what's your story? What happened?
Yes, I'm in Alberta, Canada, and I worked as an HR administrator. Um, I was there for about a year and a half, and before I was taking maternity leave. And so before I took my leave, I made sure that the company was well equipped to handle my leave. And so in Canada, we get a crazy amount of time for leave. We get a year. It can go up to a year and a half, but I was taking the year leave. And so we're paid not by the employer, but we're actually paid by our employment insurance that we pay into throughout the year. So I completed major projects. Some of these major projects that I was tasked to assign were those, at the end of your workday projects. So I had put in a lot of overtime to ensure that these projects were done. I'll give you an example of one of these
Okay.
projects. It was to rewrite all 37 of their company policies. Now, the reason I was given that project, it wasn't actually part of the job duties that I was given when I applied for this position. The position was essentially to take care of our about 45 locations in central Alberta. And I was the recruiter, so I would do offer letters, background checks, interviews, like all those things that kind of go into hiring.
So just to be clear, this is
Yeah,
not a small company. 45 locations. This is a goodly sized company you're working for.
that's right. Now I'm going to estimate how many people. I believe it's going back about to 2021, but at the time I believe it was about 800 employees,
Okay, wow.
and about a
And
hundred. Yeah, I'm sorry.
well, just to be clear, so as you're working your way towards maternity leave, you're putting
Yes,
in extra work to make sure
yes.
they are as prepared as they can be for your absence.
That's right. So what happened is I come into this role. It's kind of a brand new role. So I'm just kind of going to take you just back kind of to the beginning. So in my interview, um, the HR director, and that is actually who my boss was, she found out that I had a history working with policies. and writing them, editing them, and kind of keeping them up to legislation. So she said, "Oh, well, that works out because we have a whole stack of policies that we need rewritten. So we're
Hmm.
going to give you this." And she hands me this mess. This, like, I'm not kidding you. It was it was big, of other companies' policies, of other ideas that they had, big whiteboard kind of. It was essentially like 15 people had worked on these policies who were not policy writers. And so I was just handed this disaster. So
Yeah.
essentially what I had to end up doing was start from scratch, because I'm like, this isn't like, they don't know what they're doing here. Now that wasn't actually listed as a job duty for me, but it became one because a lot of employers will add in other duties as required.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, just for reference, a policy writer in Canada makes about $90,000 a year.
I take it they weren't giving you 90,000 a year.
No, they were absolutely not. So they kind of just slipped this into my workload. Um,
Let me
additional
just
to,
pause real quick. American millennials, let's see if you recognize some of the, in fact, the American workers, let's see if you recognize some of these. Given a job that is not your job and asked to add that to your responsibilities. If you have your bingo cards, there's a big check. Go ahead.
okay, so I've got this kind of this on the side of my desk project. Dig into this. So when I was working for a company prior to that, we would complete, I would say, about 5 to 10 policies a year. And that was me and the policy specialist. Here I am tasked to complete 37 policies. Okay. And she wanted it done in about 6 months, I would say, was kind of the timeline.
Oh,
Fortunately, COVID gave me some time, kind of allowed me some breathing room. However, it was unreal. It was a huge undertaking. But that's fine. I'm a professional. I undertook it. And so essentially, I had this kind of side of my desk workload at the time. So being an HR administrator for this company, I had about 100 managers throughout all of our locations who could be requesting job postings, and that I would have to kind of funnel off these applications too.
sure.
So my workload was huge. When throughout my kind of tenure there, we implemented a number of systems. So one of these was an applicant tracking system. So many of you, if you apply for positions, you would go online and you could kind of put your application through this system, right? And then it would kind of funnel through until you get to kind of like that end part, and so it's all kind of automated for you. Well, this company at the time didn't have that. So they were accepting, so emails were literally applications were coming into this one inbox, and I was having to parse out which of the, 30 to 40 job postings I could have out at the time, and figure out who the hiring manager was. So alongside that process, I took on project manager for implementing the first applicant tracking system that this company had. And so I worked with, they have kind of a umbrella company. So how it works is it's kind of a resource kind of umbrella company. They don't really own each other, but they operate in a way. It's kind of a weird relationship, and I don't fully understand it. But essentially,
I'm gonna
what'll
pause it
happen?
again.
Yeah.
If you're doing your bingo card, companies weirdly intertwined in ways the employees don't understand. You find yourself working now for a big old question mark. Okay, good, good.
Okay. So this parent company, the way I understood was that they could kind of buy things at large. So they could buy programs, and then they could roll it out to all the individual retailers. So it was kind of offered to me. It was I had experience, and again, in a previous position, I had this experience of rolling one of these out. And so they said, "Great. Do you want to take project lead?" Absolutely. Like, I've said yes to everything. So I applied for to be the project lead for this, and I nailed the project. I got hit all the timelines. I rolled it out, and I would equate this to I am building a highway while trying to let the traffic through, because
Mm.
at the same time there's this gravel road of applications streaming through, and so I'm still doing my regular job, all of it, and I'm also taking on this project, and I'm also working on policies.
Did you ever
So
have bosses acknowledging that you were doing additional jobs to your own? Did they ever mention the fact like, "Oh, I thank you for doing this, 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 and this, in addition to the stuff you were paid to do originally," without that letting up? Or was it just not even thought of?
it's it's hard because so while I worked there, I had great performance reviews. I had a really good relationship that I believe to be with my boss. We had some issues, any kind of employment issues, whatever. Everything was worked through. There was a lot of stress during COVID, and so when a lot of us were kind of alienated and the pressure kind of dropped on us, nothing crazy. There was nothing. It was just simple. Um, you know, Typical relationships that are happening when you're trying to work from home and figuring out how you can still function as a team. Like now hybrid work is nothing new and we do it every day. But back in 2020, it was a brand new thing and we were all pretty scared. So we got through that. But to get through that, I was working during this time period. So this would have been it was 2020, and it would have been when the pandemic hit us in Canada in it was March 18th. I remember. So we relocate to home. Um, Now during that time period, I was working overtime. So I was doing, 6 in the morning to 7 at night sometimes, just trying to get the flood. Because what was happening in our location, was our employees were dropping. They were getting COVID or they were going on sick leave. And so we had to bring in like essentially like almost, 25% more of our workforce. And so that fell on me as the recruiter to process all of these applications and all these people and get all the people back into our locations. So my workload, I would say, doubled, and
Mm.
I couldn't keep up. Now, one of these issues that I mentioned, and I'll be completely candid with you all, is I asked for help from my boss. And she had told me, she said, if you ever feel overwhelmed, if you ever need, assistance, just, kind of reach out and let me know. So I did. And she didn't give me any didn't give me any additional help. I believe one time she said, "You can skip this 1 hour meeting. Will that help you?" Oh, thank you for letting me skip this 1 hour meeting. No, not at all.
This
But
arbitrary, I'm assuming, meeting.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
ever
it
need any
was
help, let me know. Not because 'cause I'm gonna do anything, I'm just a sadist and I
yeah,
wanna watch you suffer. Okay.
yeah. And then the next day, we had this general Teams call, and I remember it was horrible. So here I am trying to do this massive workload, and my boss says in front of my other colleagues, where are the policies at, and can you get those done? And so now I've got this massive workload and I have to get these policies off too. So I was working weekends. My husband at the time said, like, you need to take a break.
Mm.
But my boss assured me that don't worry about it. We're gonna give you kind of time for time. You can take off. I'm gonna give everybody a couple weeks off in the summer, um, you know, for your hard work. Well, guess what? I never saw 1 hour of that time I took. So that was the time I had submitted in my complaint, which I will get to, because the understanding was, I'm working this time, and and I would get it back, not in pay, but in time. So fast forward, I got pregnant. It was in so the pandemic was in March, and it was about July when I announced my pregnancy, and um, So then my workload kind of became even higher because now, so I've got this applicant tracking system kind of up and running because I had meet that metric. And I'm still working on these policies to get those done. And all of a sudden, now we have to completely redo our employee appreciation plan because we can no longer meet in person. So now I'm redoing an entire plan for them. Well, my position just kept growing. And as an HR administrator, I became kind of a catch-all to, if the advisors don't have time for it, just kind of give it to Raina. So I so yeah, I took it all on though. Like I did all of it. And I did it well. And when I began the transition to, because I was going to go on maternity leave in, it was January 2021, I began building out, because my position was brand new. So I didn't have a job description, and I didn't have kind of like procedures because everything had kind of been done by me. So I spent a long time building out manuals for every single process that I did. And so I left that job in a plug and play state. I left it so literally anybody could have walked in, sat in my chair, and been successful.
Yeah. You built a system for them to use.
Yeah.
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 So then they
So
use it.
yeah. So essentially, so I went on maternity leave, and I have text from my boss, thanking me for my hard work, telling me that I had sent this email out to admin, and I said, kind of, be easy with my temporary replacement. They're just getting up to speed, but I'll see you in a year type idea. And I just wrote this really nice email to all the managers. And so my boss texted me and she said, I appreciate, thank you for like that email you sent out. That was really nice. And that was really awesome. Not as awesome as you. And I'm going to add a heart emoji into this because that kind of shows our level of, like, it was a text from my boss, but it was a friendship. And so this friendship continued for the entire year I was on leave. And because of that, so what a lot of us do in Canada, like when we're taking these really long leaves, is we're part of a team. We want to stay connected to our team. And we also feel valued as a team member, and we value our employees and the company, and we want to ensure that they're successful and they're not affected by our leave. So what I had done was I offered, if you have any questions, if you need any kind of help or direction, I'm available.
Okay. So you did offer, on the off chance that they need you while you are on leave, you'll give advice. You'll assist.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And did
Yep.
they need you to?
Yes, they did.
All right.
Yeah. So so at this so the night I kind of went on leave, it was that weekend. Because I didn't have time in all of the other madness of the position that I was doing to get everything wrapped up, which greatly reduced the workload of the position. So, I had this much stuff going on, and by the time I left, it had kind of shrunk down so that it was manageable. And so I actually never got to experience the position as I left it. So that weekend, I updated their strategic plan because with my piece, because we did this quarterly plan, and we had these metrics to kind of meet. And so I kind of went through it and I updated it because my replacement wouldn't have known what had been accomplished, and I kept stats on all of that. So that was kind of when I described that I worked for them. That was kind of the work I did. It was on the weekend. It was freely given, but also expected because I didn't have time to complete it during my regular work day. So they throughout my leave, they reached out, my boss directly. So she texted me. It was simple things. It was, where is this located? Where can I find this? Can you help me with this? This question. I'm trying to think of, it was payroll. There was a payroll form, or I can't get in. How do we do this background check process? Like there's an issue with the account. So I was there to assist, not in necessarily in like any kind of full time capacity, but just as courtesy, honestly. Just that I was
Well,
still
and
a team.
training, it sounds like. How do I do X? That's training.
Hmm. Yeah. So I felt valued at the time. I felt like, yeah, I'm willing to help. I want you guys to be successful, and uh, yeah, no problem. Because the law in Canada, we've got the Employment Standards Code, and an employer must reinstate an employee on a job protected leave, which is what
Mm,
maternity leave is. The only exception is business dissolution, in full or in part. So if you, for example, have a reorganization of your department and the job's abolished, that happens a lot, um, or if the company goes bankrupt, essentially,
mm.
those are the only situations where an employee can be let go while they're on leave. So bring you up to my return. I gave so by employment standards, we are required to give 4 weeks notice.
Mm.
So I emailed payroll. Now I'm going to mention here because this was really weird. I had texted my boss trying to come up with this work, like this return to work integration. And again, at this point, I counted our messages. There's over 200 text messages throughout my leave, and that's just messages. That's not including, emails, Instagram tags. Like we were sharing kid pictures, we were sharing
Okay,
um,
okay.
all kinds of just personal. We're friends, right? So
Sure.
no idea anything's wrong. So I text her. I said, "Hey, just it's December. I'm returning in January, and so it's kind of a month and a half away of my return." And I said, just want to see what the return to work, just reintegration looks like, right? And she said, uh, she was busy. I think she was skiing or something at the time, but essentially she just said, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about it until the new year."
Okay.
Okay, okay. So
That's
this is a huge issue here, and I and I don't know if it was malicious or not, given how things turned out. But had I listened to her, because I asked her if I needed to send an email to payroll to let them know when my return date was, and she said essentially, "Don't worry about it." And so what happens is, if had I listened to her and had I not, I would have been outside of that 4 week return window, and they could have terminated me based on not giving enough notice. Interesting.
yeah, it does make me wonder if it was malicious.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it's pure speculation, but do go on.
yeah, sure. So essentially, I know the Employment Standards Code. Being an HR administrator, I just defaulted to caution, and I did. I emailed payroll within the 4 weeks of my return date. So again, everything was seemed to be going fine. Um, and it was January 6th. So I had a phone call with the HR director. Now, my return date was supposed to be January 21st, and it's January 6th. So I'm still on leave. Well, so she calls me and she said that the HR advisor for the administrator was going to hop on the phone. Well, that in any other job would be very alarming to hear that HR was coming on the phone. But with me
The HR
working in HR,
department,
I
yeah.
am HR. Yeah, I am HR. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought, oh, great, my team member is going to be on the phone.
Hmm.
So I'm on the phone and she says, um, this is going to be a really hard conversation. And then they fired me.
What reason did they give?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I was given a without cause termination. So what that means now, an employer in Canada, in Alberta specifically, because we have very strong laws that default to corporations. Um,
Hmm.
she said it was without cause. So what that means is, An employer has the right to terminate an employee without cause at any time, provided they give acceptable notice, so about the 2-week notice period, and provide acceptable severance. The
But
only
they
thing is,
don't you have the protection though, don't you? Don't they have to give you your job back if you were on leave for an acceptable, one of those protected reasons? Meaning, wouldn't
yeah,
you have to at least have 1 day back before they're like, "And you're fired"?
yeah, that's right. But here's how they got around it. Because yes, I was supposed to be reinstated, so she terminated me. Well, how they got around me not being terminated during maternity leave, and I'm using maternity leave colloquially. How it actually works is that you get so much, you get like 3 months maternity leave, and then it goes into parental leave. But most of us just kind of refer to that whole year as just maternity leave. Um, so I was still on my like parental leave, and she said, because I said, well, this, like, you can't do this, like, this is illegal. And she said essentially, oh, well, your ROE, so that's your kind of your record of employment, is going to state the day you gave to return as your end date. And that's perfectly legal.
What that was not your intention. That was not the understanding that's communicated over a series of 200 plus texts. So
No,
what may I suppose my question is what makes that legal? What makes them able to just decide we'll interpret this differently than it was intended?
it's, see, this is what I've run into, because the amount of loopholes in the law is terrifying. And I've kind of discovered that, um, we've got all these job protections, we've got this employment standards code, and you're not as protected as you think you are.
Mm.
And it's terrifying. And I've been through this battle, this termination for 2 years. Um, I actually want to just mention a conversation I had with my employer. So this was right before I took my leave, and this is what really kind of this is pretty much, I would say, one of the two reasons why I fought so hard, why I've been fighting this so hard, why I didn't just sign the NDA. So I had seen numerous. So I was 30 years old when I went on my leave. I had been career driven my entire life. My husband and I, we are a modern dual income household, as everybody, mostly has to be in this world to have anything. So we depend on my income as much as my husband. And um, I had seen throughout my career women losing their jobs when they went on leave. But legally though, the department was restructured, and there was abolishment of this job or this position. But even in those situations, you're supposed to find like a reasonable job at comparable pay.
Mm.
Um, so I was a bit stressed out. It was December, and I was 8 months pregnant. I was doing, as I've described, much more of my role than was left when I like what was there was still there when I left, because I was finishing all these projects and all of this transition and all these procedures for the new person. So and training them too, like in person. I was training this girl. So so there were two things. So I was speaking to my boss, and she said, I've noticed, like, she said, you seem really stressed out. And I said, to be honest, I said, I've never left a position. I've never not worked for a year. I've never done anything like this. I'm actually very scared to lose my job. And she told me that's illegal. And I said, and I said,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. But I said, there's ways around it,
And she was
right?
like, "Oh, tell me some."
Yeah. And she said to me, and I quote, the only legal way is if your job is abolished, but your duties are required for the operation of this business. So don't worry.
Why the, speculate a little bit here. Why do companies generally do this? What is gained when they're like, let's fire a new mother? Like what's the point?
Well, I've had a few. I've tons really. I did actually have one. First of all, it's monetary. So you bring in a new. So my position was a specialist, you could say. I was
Mhm.
making a certain amount. I had reduced the workload. I'm very sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background.
It's sympathetic. I believe me, I understand.
So I would reduce the workload from here, to here, and so they can bring somebody in who doesn't have policy skills, doesn't have any of these, project implementation, project management, and they can pay them less. Did they pay them
Mm,
less? Absolutely, they did, because I actually knew somebody who was doing payroll, and now from confidentiality piece, she didn't tell me how much, but she did tell me yes,
of
they
course.
paid them less.
That's all you need right there. I'm sure there's other reasons, but that's the for this to be understandable to me, that's all you need. So yeah, they get even if it's the exact same person, even if they hire somebody's twin, it doesn't matter. They are restarting the clock on that employee building their own value. It's one of the many reasons you just don't see people getting a gold watch at retirement anymore that says 25 years, because you're working 5 years at a time because it's cheaper for the employer to not be giving you raises and acknowledging that you're getting better at the job. And okay,
Yeah, yeah. I
deeply depressing.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I got to tell you, Jake, I've thought through every possible reason. I have thought maybe it was because of the whole COVID thing, right, where we had the tension during all of that. But here's the thing: if the disagreement that we had back then. Now, again, this is going back to we're looking at April, May time period, and I didn't leave till January. If I had done
Yeah.
something so egregious, they should have let me go then.
Then, exactly. Yes.
You
It
don't
makes no sense.
string me along and seem as if everything's fine.
Wait,
So,
so wait, they appear to be confident that they're gonna get away with this, uh, but you said you're fighting this, aren't you?
yeah, yeah, I am.
Okay, tell
Okay,
us about
so
that.
so welcome to my world. This is what I've been dealing with for, like I say, 2 years now. Um, I okay, so I get this NDA. So they pretty much say, look, we're terminating you. Like, here you go. We're going to give you 2 weeks severance. Now, this is severance. This isn't the pay in lieu of notice as required by law. So essentially, I get the 2 week pay, and then they were going to give me 2 weeks of severance. Okay, which from the Employment Standards Code, that's fine. But um, I call employment an insurance because essentially you've got this hour bank, and you get so much. You get essentially it's like 75% or 50% of your wage for the year, and so I call them and I said, this has happened to me. I need to continue on EI, and they said, no, you can't. Your hours are used up because you took your leave. And I said, but I've been terminated. And she said, did the company dissolve? And I was like, well, no. And she says, then they are required to reinstate you.
So because they broke the law, you
Yes.
don't get the protections.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Maddening.
yeah. So the issue with the EI system is that we've got this system where essentially there's one bank. So you have to work 420 hours to qualify. and it can be used for whatever. So had this termination happened to me, this without cause termination happened to me at any other point, I could have fallen back onto EI for a full year and had at least some income. But
And I wonder, would they ultimately, and I don't understand the law here, so would the company that you worked for ultimately have had to be the ones paying that bill?
the EI,
Yes.
no. So that's through the government.
Okay.
Yeah,
Noted.
yeah. And it's amazing. I have to say, I absolutely, I think we have a lot of um, we have a lot of privilege up here. I know I feel really bad for you guys, kind of what you go through. And so I'm not, so I feel kind of entitled saying, oh, I get to, go off and be with my baby for a year. I feel that it's absolutely a privilege. And I'm not saying that,
Well, I am jealous. I don't want you
yeah,
guys to join us in this hell. No, no, no.
yeah, no, like I'm not saying I'm not appreciative of it, but I'm honestly very, very surprised that they were they didn't allow me to continue on it because that is the protection we have if we lose our job,
Yeah.
and because the employer did something that was illegal. So to add to that, something that they did was, and now this is a direct contravention of the code, the Employment Standards Code, is not only did they terminate me, not reinstate me into my role, and that my job still existed, they kept my replacement.
Okay. What's the significance of that?
So there was a ruling in BC, tribunal ruling through the Human Rights Commission. A woman had very similar situation to me, is that they had kept her replacement in her role, and she was given, like, it was awarded on her side, that it was considered, I might be pronouncing this wrong, but it was like a prima facie discrimination, because the law is clear. The only way they could have met that person is because I took leave, and therefore it's discrimination based on gender.
Okay. Gotcha. So,
Just sorry, can I pause? If my dog's really, I can put her in a different room.
no, it's fine.
Can you hear
I
her a
can't.
lot?
I do hear her. Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay,
This is a
she
stream
doesn't
that
like
is
to be left out of the loop, so she's just
hell.
freaking out a little bit.
She's welcome in any capacity.
You know
Uh,
what? I'm just gonna open the door and she might
do it.
quiet down
Yeah.
here. Harriet,
Oh, hello, sweetheart.
come
Oh,
here.
welcome.
Here,
Welcome.
we'll can all meet
All right,
her.
let's see. What do we do? Oh my gosh. Oh, this warhound. Hello.
So
What
yeah,
a
I know.
race.
I've also got is this one here.
Now there's a much more chill
Yeah, she's
uh
she's
uh
16. She'll be 17 this year.
well, she's a
Um,
very dignified lady. They both
yeah, sorry guys about that. I sent the toddler out of the house, but I didn't even think of my dog. Um, so yeah, so essentially there's a case ruling. I can kind of message you which Canley article that is, but I off the top of my head wouldn't be able to state it. So yes, so there is a precedent set in BC. Now Alberta's Human Rights Commission can't go so far outside of other precedents that they're going against them. So that's good. Like, they don't have to follow them exactly, but this case is a very similar situation from like what happened to me.
Yeah. The very least, it's speaking to the same general issue. They're saying you can't get rid of the person who has a protected leave and then
Yep.
replace them with their temporary replacement because it's
Yep.
basically a hat on a hat. It's
Yeah.
so obviously against the thing you're supposed to be doing.
Well, And if you think about it, so you've got your laws, right? You've got your employment standards code. And the way I was seeing it was, so you kind of look through the way that you can terminate a person, and it's an employer must reinstate the employee if they're eligible to return into their position, um, or a comparable position, at similar pay.
Yeah.
However, you've got this disclaimer, which is essentially, unless there's business dissolution or rearranging, and then of course, going, like, I'm not able to quote the whole code to you guys, but essentially, um, even if the business dissolves, if they restart operations within a year, you still get your job back.
Boom.
So yeah. So then think about this. So you've got your employment standards code. Now let's add a little asterisk to the bottom of the reasons where you can terminate an employee. The asterisk says, or if you like the replacement more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a flagrant disregarding of a right that Canadians said they ought to have. It's
Yeah,
saying, yeah, but unless we don't feel like it.
yeah. And the thing is had I known that that could ever have been a possibility, do you think I would have spent that much time preparing my position for a successful transition? I
No.
wouldn't have worked overtime. I would have done the bare minimum of my job. I wouldn't have written their manuals and stuff. I wouldn't have wanted, because here's the thing, I wouldn't have wanted that person to succeed. I would
Yes.
want them to be so awful that they want me back.
And not you wouldn't have been wrong to be like that, by the way. In fact, F it, even with the protections in place, I don't think you're ever wrong to do the bare minimum that you're paid for, because they will never pay you anything but the bare minimum that they owe. But
Yes.
but obviously you would not have made it easier for the person to replace you.
Yeah.
Obviously you wouldn't have been doing in the extra work of writing the emails and a reminder of how this or that is done. And I'll go
Mhm.
a step further. You might, if you didn't think that these protections which are on the books would
Yep.
apply to you, you
Yep.
might have taken some precautions against the extra risk. You might have looked for other jobs, in other
Yep.
words.
Yep. In
Un-
fact, I
unbelievable.
actually I actually had an offer come in when I was on leave on LinkedIn. She was looking for a recruiter for this company, and she
Hmm.
said, are open to discussing future employment. And I confirmed it was legitimate, first of all, because of course some of us will get all kinds of bot emails into our LinkedIn, and so I kind of asked her questions about it, and it seemed like a legitimate. Um, so the position was for Red Deer, and I live in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, so it's 50 minutes away, and that's where I was working. Now, I told her, no, I'm actually on mat leave, and I'm returning to my employer. So I could have potentially, had I known, maybe had a job lined up the December before I returned in the January, but I just dismissed it because, of course, my employer was going to reinstate me. So yeah, I lost opportunity there. I had no idea. I wasn't looking at the market. I wasn't looking at jobs.
Hmm.
At the point, it was about 40-50%, COVID rate. So that's meant that there was a lot different. Uh, it was a very weird market for jobs, and I had to all of a sudden find a job immediately because I called. My God, I spent 8 hours on the phone the day after I was terminated because I'm like, this
Hmm.
can't happen. So I called the ombudsman, not their jurisdiction. I called the human rights complaint line, and they said absolutely. She said this is um, a disgusting violation of the code. You absolutely have a case here. You can submit a complaint, but it'll take years to go through the board. And your employer gets to respond to the allegation. And do you really want to go through all that stress?
And let's just pause there for a second. The fundamental unfairness of the game that is being played is illustrated best right there, in my opinion. Because for that company, for a company which doesn't need to eat to live, years are nothing. But to a human being who has rent to pay or a mortgage to pay, baby formula to buy, diapers, car insurance, gasoline, those years eat away at you. You can't wait years for the compensation you were supposed to have yesterday. And yet, that's the game that's played.
Harriet, come here. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So I'm just gonna sit on my lap for a bit here. These
Oh,
people are walking
Harriet,
outside.
welcome.
So yeah, so I called. So I won't bore you too much for the details, but essentially, I called 4 lawyers. Um, they all said, "Yep, you've got a case, but you can't afford to fight it." In fact, they're banking on that. They're banking on you not being able to afford to fight it to sign the NDA. The NDA being, don't sue us, don't submit a complaint to the Human Rights Commission.
Interesting that they feel the need to protect against that.
Yeah, interesting. The Human Rights Commission did tell me that she said she couldn't counsel me on whether I should sign the NDA or not. And by the way, signing the NDA is the only way they were going to pay me this 2 weeks of severance. So by not signing it, I'm like, no. So I didn't sign, obviously, but I the Human Rights Commission, she did say you cannot sign away your rights. So you cannot sign away your human rights. But I wasn't going to test that.
Yeah.
So essentially, didn't sign it. I called, because I couldn't go on EI, I called this, like, there was like a financial, they're like, oh, call this financial assistance line. So I call, and she said, like, we overqualified. We didn't make enough to cover our bills, like our household bills and our dual income household, but too much. So here I am, just like I don't know what to do. And then I found an employment specific law firm. And this lawyer told me to fight it again. He said same thing, about $8,000 to fight it. I don't have that kind of money. But he looked through my case and he said, I could take this on contingency.
For the dumb Lithuanians in the audience, on contingency meaning he's only getting paid if he wins. Is that accurate?
Yep, right. That's exactly right. So there was a percentage, and I'm just, it's kind of like, it was like 20% up until it gets to court, and then it was like 30% once it's in court, something like that, around those numbers. So very reasonable, right? Very reasonable payout. And the only way I could have possibly have afforded to fight this. So I signed. Of course I signed, right? I thought this is what he was going to do was essentially he would, on my behalf, file the human rights complaint. So I'm still doing that. But also he was going to send them letters of demand. So in Canada, there's a thing called, it's if you go through a civil system, you can go after common law. Do you have that?
Yes. We do.
Okay. So it's typically like 1 month pay to 1 month worked, as opposed to like 1 week pay to 1 year worked.
Okay, gotcha. I'm not sure, for the record, I'm not sure if we have an exactly similar system, but we use common law rules in U.S. courts as well. Help me out though. So what is the offer this lawyer's putting on the table?
So he sent letter of demand, and it's been a number of years since I've looked at it. So we were going after, I believe it was 4 months. So you always overshoot, right? So you're going after 3 months or 2 months pay, you go for 5, right? And hoping that they'll meet you halfway, because they're never going to give you exactly what you want. So I believe we went for 4 months severance, and then we also went for general damages, like damages to dignity.
Now this is
Um,
this is what I'm hoping to hear. Yeah,
yeah,
damages to dignity, missed opportunities. Literally, you turned down that other job. Well,
yeah,
how much could you have made between when they offered it and then because you didn't make it on the assumption that you had a job you were coming back to?
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, no, exactly. So, and then overtime pay. And this
Mhm,
overtime was only not any hours that I worked while I was on leave at all. It
mhm.
was simply the hours I had worked overtime that the understanding was it was a time for time situation. Now we've already talked about how I never saw an hour of that time for time, the week or two she promised us, to get paid in the summer or to take in the summer never came to fruition. But I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I believe it was about 80 hours overtime that I had put in. Um, and this was finishing their policies, finishing their applicant tracking system, finishing their long-term service award program, finishing
The irony.
the transition of my job, the procedures and the manuals that I wrote, the step-by-step instructions. um I literally have a list, a training record, and I absolutely will share that with whoever cares. And it's like 2 pages long of all the training I did and all of the manuals I created for this position so that they would be successful while I was gone.
Brutal.
Yeah. So I went after that. So I'm like, no, I deserve that money. Like, you've
Yes.
done this illegal thing. I want that paid out. This whole thing is I mean, yeah, it's unbelievable.
And it's not just a
So
matter of it being right for like, it being right in your case. It's also a matter of, training these companies to expect consequences for once in their miserable existence. If you're treating employee if they get away with treating you like this, for
yeah,
example, they're going to do it again and
yeah.
again and again until they experience consequences.
Yeah, and they have, and they have. If anyone cares to look up the record, unfortunately, I know of for being in HR, and obviously I can't share details, but I know that they had a number of human rights complaints, a number of civil, legal matters. This company, what it was and is a disaster,
Mm.
and I hope they get investigated because the things people will find. Their umbrella company was in the media. I believe it was 2 years ago. There was a very, and I believe it probably made national news over there because it was a pretty big deal. It was a unionized situation. Now I'm not going to name the employer on here. Obviously, I'm you know still being courteous to them, I guess. But you can find them. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. It wouldn't be a hard stretch. Now, just a disclaimer: it is not my current employer. I think you've all figured out that that's not the case. My current employer, I've seen them navigate these situations like that I've been in with perfect ethical um, practices that do follow the code. Um, but yes, it was my former employer,
Mm.
and so let's see. So where are we? So now this gets so much worse. And this is why I'm taking this public because you will not believe the outcome to what has happened here. So I have this lawyer, he's on contingency. We go back and forth. Now, these things take years too, right? And you never really understand like how crazy it's going to be when you get into this. In the meantime, I'm accumulating debt. We're going into credit debt because
Mm.
that's the only way we could um, pay our bills. We did everything we did mortgage. We've got a house. We did mortgage skips. We were allowed to do, which, by the way, that gets tacked on to the very end of your term. We've got a probably 23-year term left because we're
Mm.
new house owners. And so that, $1,200 that we skipped is going to cost us $8,000 because that's the interest, right? So we
Oh god.
estimated that the skips we did has added an extra 8 months of mortgage payments for only skipping 2 months of mortgages.
Maddening.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
seems like a good idea. Like, so you think this is great that we can do these more, we can do, one mortgage skip a year. Um, don't do it. Don't do it unless you absolutely have to, because that gets on to the end of your term.
Mm.
So in long run, it doesn't work out. So yeah, so we did it all. We did our, we had one car payment, I believe we skipped that. We did it all. Like we were very frugal. But of course, like we accumulated debt. We had a toddler. Um, so meanwhile, I have to look for a job. And I was in the literal best um, previous position to know what employers were looking for, because that's what I did. I was literally
Yeah.
a recruiter. I looked at thousands of resumes and applications over the year and a half I was there. And even before that, in my previous role that I had been in for 5 years, I also did that too. I would review applications. So my background, my is I've got a business degree, and I put together very competitive applications. Your cover letter, your references, your all of it. Uh, just really stood out. Like they were very geared to every single position I applied to, and it still took me 7 months to secure a position.
Oof. This when people were saying nobody wants to work. So I wonder what do you think was the cause of that? Word around town or
Oh, well, so first of all, there weren't that many. So I'm looking for comparable positions at the comparable salary. I was willing to go a little bit lower, but there was a minimum I could go to, right?
yeah,
And also I had restrictions. So now I've got this child. He'd be going to daycare, and that's a certain set of hours. So I can't do weekend work. I
true.
can't do evening work. I'm constrained more than I ever would be than just picking up shifts, right? I need kind of like a steady full-time employment. So I had those constraints. I also had constraints of when I was able to look. My husband's working full-time, and I have a 1.5 year old, a 1 to 1.5 year old at this point in time, who's developing every day. And it was, it, being a mom, it was my first time being a mom, and I had no idea how, like, that mental tax, right? So you're in this mode of keeping him alive and doing all your housework and doing all the laundry, and you finally get your child to bed at 8 p.m. or whatever time they go to bed, and you've got nothing left at the end of the day. And now I have to, at the end of this day, now I have to, put in applications and work on my selling myself. And keep in mind, like, I'm selling myself from a place of devastation. I'm trying to tell
Mm.
people, like, I can do this job. I'm good at what I do. But inside, like, I'm absolutely devastated. And so I
Yeah.
was seeing a psychologist for 7 months during this period as well. Okay, so just to fast forward a bit, are we at like a time limit with anything in
No,
the
not
show?
at all.
Okay, good, because
No.
there's more. so
Hit me.
so I um so we go back and forth. Where were we with the legal stuff? So essentially, we're going back and forth on offers. Now they gave me some pretty, like, they hired this law firm, and it was pretty um so I'm coming at them over here. I'm saying, like, I want 5 months pay, and I also want damages to dignity for literally breaking the law, and also the overtime pay.
Yeah.
And they're coming over here saying, we'll give you 3 weeks. We'll give you 3 weeks pay.
Mm.
That kind of thing, right? So it was really far and few between. Well, meanwhile, my human rights complaint got accepted. Well, when my human rights complaint got accepted, their offer jumped up pretty significantly overnight. They're like, fine, we'll give you this money. So the issue with it is still, we're talking about, they're still offering me a fraction of what I want. And
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the experts, and I have full trust in my law firm, and I still do. I think they're a really good law firm, and I don't believe that they're in the wrong in any of this. So we decided, both of us, and because I'm under contingency, I am at the, if he was to say, you have to take the settlement, then I have to, because that's kind of the agreement that you get, right? Like I can't be so outrageous that I'm asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Like I have to be reasonable with it. So he said, no, you know what? Don't settle, stay firm. And I stayed firm. It was only $4,000 above their offer. What's $4,000 to a company that makes millions a year?
I would think at the very least less than the cost that their lawyers will rack up with a couple of weeks' work. So I would think not much.
Not much. So, so I didn't settle. But my lawyer said, and this is, to this day, doesn't make any sense why they took this risk. Um, my lawyer told me that there was, so most of these people, me, like women who go on leave and they get terminated and stuff, they'd sign the NDA. Most do. He says, you know, let's say 8 out of 10 people sign the NDA. Of those that don't, he said, I think it was like, he said, essentially 98% of these cases end in settlement, because the employer would be stupid to take this to court because it's on the record.
Cut to
They took it to court. They went. I was expecting a settlement. Literally the morning we're in court, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking they're going to hand me a check. Then I'm sitting in the courtroom, and I say to my lawyer,
"That's crazy."
Are we still able to do like a settlement at this point? And he's like, we're in court now. And I'm like, oh, here's my life.
Currently in court. Great.
Yeah.
So they're just determined to, like, they really don't want to pay you off. Is it that they don't? I mean, this is. I'm gonna ask you to speculate, but acknowledge that it's pure speculation.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's like they don't want to set a precedent for their other employees?
Okay. So here's what I think. I think, again, speculation. I don't know. But what I have heard is that sometimes there's a board, okay, and the board has, essentially, they need to be alerted if something is happening above a certain amount. Now, this board in particular, the amount we believe to be the amount they offered me, and they never went past that. And the reason is because if it went past that, we thought perhaps it's because then they would have to get the board approval. And to get the board approval, you have to tell them what happened. I mean, who wants to say, what HR director wants to say, oh, well, the reason is because we terminated her during that leave and we kept her replacement. I mean, I can't imagine that kind of conversation. So, but again, speculation, maybe it was just they were very, very, very confident. And yeah,
I fully believe. Having been an employee myself, I fully believe. Okay, they didn't want to tell their equivalent to managers. That's 100% my belief.
Yeah.
So they go, if we can't do literally 1 red cent more than this amount, or I got to go tell the boss. And then they get to the position where they must, because that's the new offer on the table is, $4,000 more than this. So they say, okay, boss, here's how we screwed up. And the boss is like, well, let's make it significantly worse. Let's make this way more expensive for everybody.
Okay, so here's what I think happened. Now, as the HR director, you are required to set to follow a certain standard, right? You're the expert at your employment. The board agrees to your hire. You've got all these fancy credentials. My boss in particular, she actually told me one point, because she had, I think she's got her CPHR, and then she has the equivalent to, you have it there, and I can't really remember. It's another acronym. So it's a weekend course that she took that. So she tells me, Well, I'm pretty much a lawyer.
Oh, that's gonna end great.
Okay. So, um, now you can imagine, we don't accept the offer. We don't accept this offer. And the reason I didn't accept it is because after taxes, so 1/3 comes off in taxes right away.
Mm.
And then my lawyer gets, before taxes, he gets, it was like, I think it was like at the 22% mark or something. And so essentially that's over 50% of it gone. And so it would wouldn't it would have only paid off half of the debt that I had accrued.
Mm.
And I would have had to, so in order to accept that settlement, I would have had to have dismissed my civil case and also um, withdrawn my human rights complaint. And then I still would have been in debt.
Mm.
So
Mm. Mm.
that's why I didn't settle. Um, so anyway, so we get to court and oh, sorry, I was going to say the speculation I had. So essentially, what I think happened is she went into the CEO's office, and the CEO loved her, and she said, "Hey, here's the thing. You know that case that the whole thing that we did to that girl that was here, and we decided keep a replacement, whatever. Yeah, that's going to court now." And I just imagine that, she probably asked for the extra money. I mean, she wouldn't have wanted to spend the day in court. She probably asked for the extra, $4,000. But I almost guarantee he said, "Well, I guess you're going to court."
Mm.
Because he's trusting her as the expert, because she would have. Now, just to rewind even further, at some point, they had to make the decision to not bring me back. And I can only imagine, if the CEO, who, by the way, he came out of his office. So the day I went on mat leave, he came out of his office and he thanked me for sending the policies to him. So like we had a really good relationship. I worked with him a fair bit on the policies to make sure that they were kind of like with what he needed. So he like we had a good relationship. He had nothing against me. I thought he was, good man. So anyway, we she would have to at some point say, "Okay, we're not going to bring this girl back." And I really hope he was like, well, HR 101, isn't it like you really have to return like a mat leave to their job? I feel like everybody knows that. Like that's like rule 1. Job protected leave. You don't terminate somebody on leave.
Like one
But
of the famous HR policies that is necessary. Yeah, that is legally required.
yeah, yeah. So so you can imagine, so with the way she would speak to me, I'm pretty much a lawyer. I just can only imagine that she convinced him, well, I know what I'm doing. I know how to get around this. I know the rules. So he probably would have, because he allowed it, said, well, I guess you're the expert in this and you know what you're doing. Now, circle around, a year or two, I'm suing them now. I filed a human rights complaint and I'm fighting them. I imagine he would have been a pretty pissed off to be like,
Yeah.
I thought you were the expert in this. Like, what's happening? Why all of a sudden are we being sued? Why are we going to court?
I mean, this is like getting scabies from the exterminator. Like it's the last department on earth that should get hit with HR troubles.
Yeah.
And yet,
And
this
yes,
lady took
exactly.
a weekend course, so
And
I guess
yes,
she
she
knows
took,
better.
yeah, exactly. She took a course. So okay. So I just have to, again, speculating, but I'm guessing that he made her essentially prove herself in court. So now the thing I didn't know going into this is that, because there was a number of stuff, I'm like, this is the employment standards. Employment standards has all of these rules. It must be the same in civil court. But I had absolutely no idea how separated these bodies are, how separated civil is from the Human Rights Commission. So even though they both have, Canley precedents, Canley case law, me at least, and I have been told differently on Reddit lately, but when I spoke to my lawyer, and I numerous times said, please present this case in court, and he said, that's for the human rights trial. So,
Okay.
so the issue is, we were going after, again in court, so we're going after the severance. I think it was 5 months at this point, and we're going after the general damages and the overtime. So there's this policy. Now I'm going to get into the technicalities, and it is kind of complicated. So I'm just going to really sum it up. Essentially,
Okay.
So when you sign your employment offer, you abide by these policies, and these policies outline all kinds of stuff, every single piece of behavior that they can throw at you, from can you wear piercings and stuff, which, by the way, they can't do that anymore. So I took that out of the old policies. Anyway, so they've got all of these regulations. You have to follow them, right? And most of us, you sign because you need the job and you're not going to go through the policies. Well, in this case, like, I read through them because that's what my job was. So I knew these policies very, very well. And because of that, I rewrote the employment and termination policy to abide by the laws at the time. So as it was, essentially they had just pulled what the notice period was from employment standards. And so it's kind of a copy, literally a copy of it. So kind of the 1 week pay to 1 year worked, as if it's a without cause termination. But there was no limiting clause. So in what you'll notice in a lot of these contracts is they have essentially this clause at the bottom that says, this in full is the agreement. You cannot go after common law or essentially anything else. This is the agreement in full, and that's called a limiting clause. Well, their old policy that I signed didn't have that, and so I added that in, and I made it really clear, and I added it in to protect them in the future. I never signed their new policy. So they had to hold me to the policy I signed when I started. And my lawyer reviewed it, and he said, yep, he said, this is the strongest part of our case. He says, because keep in mind, this is an employment law firm specifically. This is all they do. He read through it. He agreed with his colleagues that they're going to take this case on contingency. Lawyers don't just do that if they think they're not going to win, if they don't have a chance. So he's very confident in this. I was confident in it because I had found the mistake myself, and I had rewritten it and added it in. So because of that, we were able to go after common law because it wasn't a limiting clause and it was a copy from the employment standards. Okay, so then this gets crazy, if it hasn't already been really crazy. So essentially, we spent the full day in court, and we went so long that we actually had to do closing statements via WebEx like a month later. So they both did their closing statements. Now, judgment happened. It was January 25th of this year. And it took 9 months to get judgment, which is really weird. But we thought, my lawyer and I, it was a good sign, because if the case was that complicated that, he really had to, he was looking at how much time I, should have got and the damages are, and it was a complicated case. And so the longer it took, the better, we thought, as opposed to, turning it around in a week and being like, yeah, easy. So he delivered his judgment. So on the first claim, am I held to their current, to the employment contract that I signed, in regards to their sorry, let me rephrase that. Does their termination policy limit me to going after common law severance. Well, the judge decided that their policy was fine and upheld it.
Okay.
Issue 2. Was this a bad faith termination? Because if it's ruled as a bad faith termination, that's kind of where your general damages come in, right? So your damages to dignity and whatever. So he laid out the case of essentially what a bad faith termination looks like. Was the employer willfully misleading? Was there essentially anything around their conduct that could be determined as bad faith? Were they transparent in their termination with you?
Well, I mean, surely just the violation of the law, is that not bad faith enough? You had employee protections that were not respected.
Well,
What
exactly.
was found? Well, what did the judge arrive at here?
Well, so that's the thing is I don't understand it. I'm still trying to figure this one out, because everything that happened, including the promise that we were not going to terminate you, the relationship we had, the trust we had built, don't worry about giving notice to payroll. We'll talk about your return next, in the new year. Every point of that was giving me, peace of mind. Your job's safe. So the judge ruled it was not bad faith. And here's his reason. His reason was they were kind to give you notice.
Well, that makes sense, because the other day I robbed a bank, but the police weren't allowed to shoot at me because I said, "Heads up, I'm going to rob you tomorrow." Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. So yeah, and I stunned. I'm like, they gave me notice I was being terminated, but it was kind of them to do that. It was kind of them to let me know they were about to break the law.
Yeah, hey, heads up, I'm going to burn your house down. So it's not a crime because I just told you I'm going to do it. That's insane. The logic makes there is no logic to that. It was kind of them to inform you of that they were going to violate your rights. Yeah. I got to say, I don't agree with this judge.
No. So I actually just remembered something else because there were some witnesses on this. There was my ex-boss, and then there was also this witness. This adds another layer of, I would say, almost cruelty to this whole experience. So she was my replacement. So she came in. Now she was actually an old friend of the director. So she came in as my replacement, and her past job terminated her during maternity leave.
Oh my God.
Okay, right? So her previous job terminates her during maternity leave. And I see my son's just returned, so I'm just going to close this door here again.
Welcome back.
Okay. They'll keep the our Boston Terrier Harriet from barking at least. So
there you go.
Okay, so she says, so she was devastated from that. Of course, she was devastated, and so she's just returning to work. And this is her first job since this termination, and it was seen, this termination of her position was just awful, but it was legal because her job was actually abolished. So it was actually a legal termination. Nothing wrong with it. I confided in her. Now, again, she was a long-term, first of all, friend, and also she was had been an employee of this director in the past. So I confided in her and I just said, to be honest, I'm actually really afraid that same thing's going to happen to me. And she said she would never do that.
Well, listen, I wish you luck at your next job when you replace some gal on maternity leave and then permanently take hers. And then we can all just keep doing this until we're all paid as close to nothing as these companies can get us.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so now this gets even crueler. And this is now, by the way, you guys, I someday or someone, these this day in court that I had, it should have been broadcast on TV. You would not believe how insane it was. My lawyer at one point, because their defense attorney was giving me open-ended questions, and so I, yeah, open-ended questions. He said to me at one point, because he was wondering why I wasn't applying to more jobs, and he says to me, okay, so you had like a 1.5-year-old. So tell me, what were you doing all day?
Well, you're at it. Give me a story about life on the Mississippi River in the 1800s. What? Just ask a question.
Yeah. So I said, so this moment though, this was a drop mic moment, because even I don't know the name of her, but she's like the transcriber, or she's kind of doing the court transcription type idea. So she's there. And so now she's just like kind of sitting like this and she's typing, and she's just this very stoic older lady, like takes her job very seriously, stand at the king and all this stuff. So she's sitting like this. And he says, so tell me, you got a 1.5 year. Like, what were you doing all day? And she goes, everybody stopped and looked at him.
I promise you, I can translate that stenographer's look right there. That stenographer was saying, this mother, because she's going to have to type out every word that you say if you walk him through the entirety of your day. What were you doing all day? Raising a kid. What the are you talking about? Help me out with this. All right.
So I say to them, and I won't say it again to you guys, but essentially I'm just like, well, let me tell you. And he did. He didn't cut me off. He let me tell my whole thing of what I did all day. And it was amazing. So anyway, my lawyer even said to me, it was like a break, and he said, he hasn't stumped you once. You are the best witness, like you're perfect witness. And he was laughing. He was like, this is amazing. Even at one point, they were trying to catch me on something where he was trying to get me to agree to some number. And I just said, I don't know. Because he's like, this is right, isn't it? And I'm like, I don't know. You are showing me the numbers here. I can't tell you. Like, the amount of kind of like, they try to get you into different situations and make you say things. But you just have to really slow down, think about what they're asking, and just think through it, right? So anyway, my day in court was amazing, and the transcription. Now I estimated, so between the transcription, the closing statements, and the ruling will cost an estimated $2,700 Canadian, so a lot cheaper for you guys to pay for. So essentially, you have to order them online.
Still not cheap.
No, it's not cheap, and it's not the kind of money I've got right now. So I haven't ordered them. I am going to order the judgment, but anyway. So sorry, been circling around on my points here. So back to this girl who was terminated during maternity leave in her last job. So this is on this. So she goes onto the stand, and this was chilling. This was so awful, and I hope people, like, someday all these transcripts, they'll be released and you'll be able to read this day in court, because it was disgusting. So we find out that the HR director her boss went to her while I was on leave and said, I'm going to terminate Raina. How can I do it better?
She just had this happen to her.
Yeah. And she said that this HR director would never do this. So now this girl is being asked by her, not only her boss, but the HR director of the entire company, how can I stab this girl in the back nicely?
Not even nicely. How can I get away with this backstabbing I'm planning?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and I do hate to rush, but I want to get to one part of this.
Of course.
In your initial post, you were
Yep.
saying, help make it a positive precedent.
Mhm.
Um, what are you hoping to gain from spreading the word about this case? And well, first of all, where does the case stand now,
Okay.
and what do you hope to gain by spreading the
Yeah,
word
yeah,
about
yeah. Okay. So essentially, okay, so back to the judgment. So yeah, so we've already said the first count he rules. Um, uh, their policy was fine. Second count, it wasn't bad faith because they gave me notice. Great. The third count, the overtime, we did withdraw the overtime because there's this like 2 year, well, a number of reasons. One, there's a 2 year claim period. It had passed. Two, I was exempt because I was in HR. So didn't get that. It's fine. I'm just gonna let my dog out of the room here.
Sure. Oh, the wee
Okay,
dog.
so I lost the entire thing. That's it. I lost the entire case.
Mm,
Now
mm,
my lawyer wasn't present. This was via WebEx. He wasn't present because he wasn't fearing this outcome in the slightest. He essentially was just waiting. So he sent somebody else, one of his other colleagues, to just stand in, and he said was expecting to come back to a note that said, how much I got, essentially,
yeah.
how many months and all that stuff. So for him to come back to a note that said like nothing, like we lost the case. So he phones me because he was in trial that day. So he calls me during lunch and he's like, "What happened?" And I was trying to explain. It's obviously really hard. It was very devastating, but it's, half an hour of this judge essentially just like, you know, standing up for my employer. He's citing case law. He's citing all of these decisions and stuff that why he was ruling on these things. And I've laid it out just very briefly for you guys here, but obviously there was more. Um, and so my lawyer says, "Oh, it's okay. When the judgment comes out, I can read that." No, oral only decision, which I've been told is very weird. Now, maybe it's because it was a very, very simple matter and nothing weird happened here and there's no issue with any of it. So don't question it. Or, I mean, it's something that now it can't go into Canley. And so people can't, it doesn't really set a precedence, which is great. I'm very glad that this case doesn't set a precedence. But it's terrible. It's awful. It's awful because we can't people can't kind of look at it and judge it. And I've been getting torn apart on Reddit because I'm telling people, "Oh, oral only," and so they're like, "Well, it didn't happen then." So I am ordering the transcripts. It'll take a couple hundred. That's fine. I can do that. It's a 10-day turnaround. There's 2-day, 10-day, 30-day. I'm going to go for the 10. It just base the price is kind of cheaper the longer you go. But yeah, I will get that to you guys. So now for the worst part. I was not fully prepared for what could happen if I lost. Going into this, I've never been in a legal situation in my life. I found this lawyer on contingency. I thought, kind of, if I lose, whatever, it doesn't cost me anything. My lawyer, he did warn me right before we went to court. He did say, if you lose, the very, very, very worst case is the judge could award $3,700 to them. Okay. Well, you know, at that time, it's, you're balancing your risks, right? You're thinking, um, being in those situations, like, you really are uh, trying to, like, weigh different areas, and you've only got the information you have. And so at that time, the decision I made with the information I had was not to accept um, their offer. And because that's, hindsight 2020, of course, but that's what I did. And
Yeah.
anyway, so what happened, and you all kind of know the punchline of this, is the judge awarded them double costs. Now, it doesn't mean double their legal fees. It means double. There's a fee schedule essentially of what they can charge you. So, for example, it's 1,500 for a day in court. Pre-trial conference 800, prep 2,000, that kind of thing. So he gave them double. The reason is because they did something on their offer called a Calder Bank. And that was an old case. It was some kind of precedence where essentially, to stop people from rejecting reasonable offers, they say, okay, if you're going to be ridiculous and take this to court, and we're trying to give you a reasonable offer, then we're going to Calder Bank this case, and so we're going to go after double fees. So it's kind of it's a threat. It's a threat that,
Yeah.
take our offer, or we're going to go after double.
If you try to stick up for your own rights, you
Yeah.
run a risk of getting bled further.
Well, yeah. And so I felt pretty threatened, I have to say. But again, the double at this point was 3,700, and that's doable. I mean, that was a risk I was willing to take. Um, what he awarded them, the $9,318.06, was not, like, absolutely not. Like, that is, I don't have words for it. I fought against this company that had done everything that they could to, yeah, it was like, so, okay.
Now wait a minute. I just want to frame this beginning to end very quickly for the
Yep.
audience so we
Okay.
fully understand what we're dealing with. The chain of events when you hit the fast forward button takes maternity leave. An employee takes maternity leave, which she is guaranteed in Canadian law. She tries to return from maternity leave and finds she no longer has her job, which she was supposed to be guaranteed under Canadian law. She takes it to court, and what she gets for that is fined $9,000. Ask yourselves if that seems fair. What are you doing about it now? What's the
Okay.
next step?
Okay. So essentially, so they they what they've done, is they put, uh, it's like they file, it's like, I think it's like a lien on your house or something. So they file this,
Good
like,
God.
writ of enforcement. So they want to put some kind of claim on my property if I don't pay. I've got until, I'm paying it, or like, I'm not paying the day of it's due. I believe it's due, like, I think it's like March 22nd or something, but I'm paying it like March 19th is kind of the drop dead date for me. Because absolutely not. I am not, like, because they would get access to my bank accounts.
Oh my God.
They would get access to, we've got, the property, like our house, for example. And so I think it's kind of something like a lien on your house, but it's gross. And then there was some kind of talk about wage garnishing. Anyway, none of that's happening. I refuse. I'll take out a line of credit if I have to. Another one. But so it's gross. It's gross. I am horrified that this is how our civil system can operate. As I've kind of led you through it, it's kind of a technicality because it's loopholes and legal stuff. The judge wasn't looking at, like, if they broke the law. Essentially, he wasn't
Yeah.
looking at the fact that they kept my maternity leave replacement. On the stand, the HR director admitted The business had not dissolved. My position was not abolished. They had not filed bankruptcy. They hadn't gone into receivership. All of those questions. And when he asked her each of them of if this would be legal. And she said no to all of them. The judge heard that and still didn't consider this a bad faith ruling. So I get this judgment. I get this massive bill dropped on me. And I was, as you can imagine, I'm appealing this, of course. I was like, I must appeal this case. So let me tell you what that looks like. So I had 30 days. So the judgment was January 25th. I could appeal. It was like February 24th was my appeal end date. My lawyer said, first of all, he said it was an uphill battle because not only now are you fighting the company, you're also fighting this judge. You're putting, that he's made such an egregious error in judgment that it must be overturned. You need to pay for your transcripts, so $2,700. And then if I had him defend me, it would be, he told me, between $10,000 to $15,000. Well, I don't have that money either. So obviously he can't take it on contingency. Again, no fault of their own. That is the agreement that we have, the contingency agreement, because literally you can appeal endlessly, right? And a lawyer can't be working for free for 5 years. So I get it. That's fine. But unfortunately, that means that I would have had to go alone at this. Well, you can imagine my fear of me. If my employment law firm lawyer couldn't win in this really easy case of all he does against just this corporation, what chance do I have of appealing and fighting not only them, but now the judge? Yeah. And if I lost, I'd owe them more money.
Oh, yeah, you double the fees you owe just from having hired a lawyer. Just for having dared to try to defend yourself in court. Yeah.
Yeah. So I made the decision. It was really, really hard. And I know that a lot on Reddit are weighing in and saying I should be appealing it. I get it. But with the insurmountable amount of work it would have taken on my end, feeling like I didn't have a legal team supporting me, I decided that it wasn't worth it because the judgment, if it was to be overturned, it would have been probably another year. I was also counseled, I don't know if this is right or not, but this was the counseling I received, is that had I appealed, then the Human Rights Commission would have delayed their side of it because this is still ongoing. Like this is still happening. And I felt so like I didn't trust the system. The civil system had failed me in such an astonishing way that I just didn't trust to go through the whole thing again.
Understand.
Alone.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm hearing the ones who are saying, oh, there's free legal aid and there's free whatever. Well, let me tell you my situation. When I was looking in the beginning, these 8 hours of phone calls that I had, and I was looking for this free legal aid, I got, it was awful. There was one who told me, yeah, that sucks. There was one who told me, yeah, I mean, you have a case here, but most women, they stay home after they have kids. And so really,
good. Never mind.
You should be fortunate that they offered you 2 weeks severance to start your new career as a housewife. So I got just some really, and so I wasn't, because of what I had gone through in the very beginning of this whole case, trying to find this lawyer, all of the searching I had done, I didn't have enough confidence that I'd be able to find somebody else in the time frame to then defend me for free. Because again, can't afford to also pay for a lawyer. Anyway, so yeah, I had many reasons that I didn't appeal it. Whether that's right or wrong, obviously you can judge me for that all you want, but the bottom line is I owe this money. and I will pay it. What I want, I will get to now what I'm looking for here. So first of all, like it's no surprise, my amazing sister, she set up a GoFundMe to pay off this ridiculous, like it's over 20,000 in debt that I have right now. The most important is just this 9,000 that I owe. Every dollar, like Jake said, counts. Like if share or like or spread the word, I would really appreciate it. I feel like globally it's a lot easier to handle than just me kind of trying to take this on. So I really appreciate that. Now my stance has changed a bit from my Reddit because I've learned some more things. And again, this is something that happens when you come into this whole legal battle and you begin learning things. And I yesterday have learned more about the Human Rights Commission. So my conciliation is booked for, I believe right now, I think it's May 21st. I think it changed. I think I said May 26th, but I think it's actually changed to the 21st. It's a half-day conciliation. I was told by the Ombudsman's Office, the Human Rights Commission, and also my lawyer, that it was a 2-year wait. That this was a 2-year wait, and then you would get, then they would see. Well, guess what? It's been 2 years. I've been in this for 2 years, and my case is coming up. It's in May. Great. That's what I thought. I thought, finally, I'm going to get some justice here. Turns out, conciliation is just the beginning. It's just they do a half-day thing. It's essentially, it's the equivalent of a mediation. So it's me, my ex-boss, my lawyer, her lawyer. And they kind of go through your case. And at that point, even though my case has been decided, like has been accepted, they could still decide it doesn't have merit. So if they decide that, it can be dismissed, or I could get a settlement offer. And if the company was extra evil, they'd offer me, $9,318 as a settlement or something like that. if they're or nothing, I guess that would be more evil. So if I get a settlement, I'd sign an NDA. Obviously, at this point, I'm speaking publicly about this because I need to spread the word on this GoFundMe. So I'm speaking to everybody, and I'm also, just sharing kind of how the system can fail. And I really want to warn others. You absolutely need to understand that if you find a lawyer on contingency, it's not free. If you lose, you can be paying even more than you'd probably have had to pay for that lawyer in the first place. Because like I told you, I was quoted $8,000 to fight this case, and now I'm paying over $9,000. So what I said in the Reddit thread, the title, I fully believed at the time. I believe that I had this historic case.
The audience won't know any of that, but
I'm so sorry. I thought you would come from here.
No. So just tell them what your takeaway is now.
Okay. So essentially I believed that I had an upcoming precedent-setting case with the Human Rights Commission in May. Now that isn't necessarily untrue. It's just it could be past conciliation. It could be 2 years to tribunal if I'm accepted. If the tribunal says, yes, there absolutely was discrimination here, which I think you'll all agree there was, they can appeal it. The company can appeal it. So now we're looking at 4, 5, 6 years until I get a result. I mean, hopefully it's shorter, but I'm not banking on that anymore. At first, I was like, this is where justice is going to be served. And now I'm thinking, you know what? I'm spreading this out to the community. I'm letting you all know that this is how employers can abuse the law. This is how they can abuse the Employment Standards Code and the equivalent that you have. And so my overall takeaway right now is in Canada, we need to separate our general employment insurance, what you get when you lose your job, from your job protected leave. Because if we can take away the power that the company has then this whole thing wouldn't matter. If I had been able to go back on to EI until I found a job, I wouldn't have sued them. I would
Mm.
have signed their NDA. I would have taken the 2 weeks. I would have had the fallback to go on EI. Goodbye. I wouldn't have said a word about it because the company had all the power. They knew that. And they also knew that they could drag out this human rights complaint for years. And so that's my one message. And then I guess just, stricter laws around employers who break the Employment Standards Code. Now in BC, the ruling was amazing. I believe she got like $80,000 was her award. Phenomenal. The Human Rights Tribunal awards in Alberta have been lesser. They're getting better. So believe it's about, between 10 to 15. I've heard maybe 25,000. But for what I was told by the when I first called the Human Rights Commission, she said I was looking at around 20,000 for a case like mine. And that had that been all, that would have been great. At this point, that won't cover my debt because, as you know, and I'll be waiting for years if I get that and if they don't appeal it. So what I'm hoping for is I'm hoping that Alberta will follow BC standard and they'll look at that case more thoroughly and they'll understand that by giving low awards, they are perpetuating discrimination. They're perpetuating employers breaking the law, using Employment Standards Code as guideline. Like, maybe do this, maybe not. If you feel like like the person better, whatever, right? Because I've heard, working in HR, I've actually heard people say this, human rights, like having that judgment or whatever, because they're all separate. It's not like they line up and the company goes bank, so let's say a company has 5 human rights judgments against them. They're all separated and not one. They don't link. It's not like a serial murder case. It's not like they're saying, oh, you've murdered 5 people. You are now a serial killer. It's always 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. They never look at the picture as a whole. Again, this is what I've been told. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe they are, but I have been told that they're all seen individually. And so I have been told, working in the HR field, that the human rights, these judgments, they're just attacks of doing business as you want.
Well, that is a habitual thing in the United States, and the source of a lot of our woes. They literally just consider that the cost of doing business. They say, yeah, you pay a little fine and you move on, because they know they will make more money by breaking the rule and paying the fine. Than otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Because you look at your return on investment, right? So they are paying this person, hypothetically, let's say they're paying them $10,000 less. Well, in 5 years, they know they're going to have to pay me $20,000.
Yeah.
Can you see how they're still making their bottom line? It's awful. It's honestly awful. I'm disgusted by the system. I can't believe this is happening in Canada. We're really not much different than you.
That's why I can believe it is happening, but you have an opportunity now to make it stop. And people acting the way you have acted, I want to say, are what will eventually win this fight. You made it more expensive than it would have been. I congratulate you there. I know they're going to try to bleed you, but you're doing the other thing that's good. You're letting people know about it. And when people get outraged and they start talking to their PMs or their representatives or whoever they have as their voice in government, that is when these rules will get stricter, and that's when we'll get actual consequences for these folks.
Well, and yeah, so I guess my ask to whoever is listening here is, essentially, so first of all, in terms of putting kind of highlight on my case here, I really want to stress that, maybe I won't, because changing laws, as we all know, is can be very, very stressful. But at the minimum, by me, I have a very rare opportunity where I'm able, because I haven't signed an NDA, most do, to speak out a bit against my experience. And my hope is that let this be a warning to other companies
Hmm.
that I'm hoping, if another company is uh, considering doing what this company has done, and I have full expectation that the name of this company is going to come to light. Maybe they'll, maybe don't do that, because the PR nightmare that they are going to experience from this, I think, is going to cost them a lot more than just
Good.
paying me the, it's like the 20,000 I wanted. Um, Again, only getting 10,000 of that at the end of the day, not paying off my debts, but getting close. I would have gone away. I would have signed their NDA. I would have withdrawn my human rights complaint. But the fact that they thought that they could be above the law, that they could work the system, that they could mistreat an employee who was going above and beyond to set them up for success. And that's essentially it. So, right, I've been sending my story out there. I appreciate this so much, Jake, just getting this
It was my
experience
pleasure.
to share this. And I've been writing we've got the status of women in Alberta here. So the powers that are in place, it's the NDP and the Conservative. I've been emailing them. Just the other day, one of them, she viewed my story, which was amazing. So my Facebook story I had put up about separating EI into two different banks, and then stricter enforcements of the law to employers. So she did view that. So getting your voice out there to whoever is listening is a huge help. Highlighting that how the laws can change. It takes a lot of us, because one person can't do anything. But I think the more people that have eyes on this, and the more people that are demanding change and demanding that job protected leave should be job protected leave without an asterisk.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, let's see what we can do.
Heck yes. I think that's a perfect attitude. Thank you so much for joining us today, Raina Varty.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you around. Good luck. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, that was Raina Varty. I am super, super grateful that she was willing to have this conversation. Um, I think it's an important one. I don't think every I don't think every fight needs to be a victory to be valuable. I think the fact that she was willing to slug it out with this company and to show that the Canadian worker is not a timid thing and will, in fact, fight for their rights, I think that will be valuable to the next generation, which she has now brought into this world. So, uh, if you would like to help her out, because she fought and it cost her, if you'd like to help her out, there is a link in the description for her GoFundMe, which is what we can do to help in this particular case. If, however, you don't want to see Canada become the cesspool of no worker rights that the U.S. became and is currently clawing its way out of being, get in touch with your representatives and insist upon strengthening protections for workers, including, for example, separating those two pools of unemployment that were discussed earlier. I'll leave it to Raina Varty for phrasing that, though, because she did a fantastic job. Gang, I do apologize. Normally, I like to read comments and such. Oh, what the heck? We'll read some comments. Let me jump in here. Lightning Rod, hello from Thunder Bay. Don't forget to vote. Yes, Lightning Rod, I wholeheartedly agree. Public utility, bosses are psychopaths, full stop. Agreed. Mother of pearl. There we are. Winners and losers, I refused to sign the NDA. I refused to sign the NDA at TYT when they laid me off because I couldn't imagine agreeing to keep quiet about injustice. I think that's a good general policy. I don't like the very concept of non-disclosure agreements. Pinkerbell, that was a great guest. I agree. Took a gamble with this one, but she had such an interesting story that um, I felt I just wanted to give her an opportunity to talk to you all. Uh, the Baker's Dozens Cats. Hi Jake, good show tonight. Poor lady. Yes, I agree. It was a good show. No, she I mean, it had such a bizarre run of luck there. From the getting replaced by the lady who had gotten unjustly replaced by the lady who had gotten unjustly replaced. The bizarre judge. But frankly, everything that happened within that court could have been on the level, and my feelings about the importance of her talking to you wouldn't change. I think what she did is what, to the best of our ability, we should all do given the opportunity, which is when a company threatens you with a good time with court. So it's quite a bad time, but when they threaten you with court, call the bluff and just generally make this is obviously not legal advice. This is activism advice. Make it as expensive for them as you possibly can if activism is your end goal here. If that's your priority, is right versus wrong, then make it an incredibly expensive thing for them to violate the law. But frankly, this was a violation of labor rights, and I feel it should be treated as such. Pinkerbell, that baby is going to be in college before she gets paid. God damn. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I didn't come up with that, however. I was trying to make a joke about it being a professional hockey player by the time. Never quite got there. Jules T. Corps are notoriously known for appealing because it's a form of tactical delays. Yeah, yeah, they don't mind just kiting a case to death. Well, here's the deal, gang. When this stream ends, we're going to dump out into the letter hack already in progress, is my understanding. Is that the case? Is that the case? Possibly. Let's find out. The letter hack, is he already in progress? Yes. Okay. So we're going to head over there. If y'all want to check out the new lie detector, it's on. I'll see you there. If not, and regardless, I enjoyed hanging out with you. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name is Jake, and this right, y'all, is Donald James X.